Hey, good evening, everybody. It is around 8:30 on Thursday evening, and I don't know why I announced that when I come on Facebook Live. It's not like you don't have a watch or a clock or something, so apologize for announcing what time it is and what day it is. Maybe that's for people that come back later and watch it. I don't know, but I am wanting to share a little bit with you. I just got off of the fourth part of a six-part webinar series that I'm doing called 40 Days to Up Your Game. It is specifically built for men to become better at their relationships in their marriage. And so I'm working with some guys and teaching some things that I have developed over the years. So the course is called 40 Days to Up Your Game, but it is based on something that I developed and wrote called the four views of value, and I'm going to show you a little bit of that, what that involves here. I'm going to try to. So here are the four views of value that we talk about in this course. There's an equal view of value where we relate to another person and the four views are all about how I view myself. So what is my value in relationship to the other person? So we can view ourselves as equal in relationship. We can view ourselves as more valuable than the person we're talking to, less valuable, and we can view ourselves as we're equal in value, but we have to protect our value. So that's the sort of the basis of the course, and that's what we're working on. And tonight we were talking about what it meant to be living with the value that is less than. So basically, what that means is, what does it look like when we are in a relationship, whether it's our wife, whether it's any other relationship, but primarily as I'm working with men in your marriage relationship, what does it look like when you're having a conflict and you actually have a value of yourself? You view yourself as less valuable than your wife. What difference does that make, and how can you work at changing that? Because what I have discovered is, when we don't have an equal value, when we don't view ourselves as equally valuable as the person in front of us, that's when the conflict becomes worse than it needs to be. That's when the conflict lasts for days and months and years sometimes. And so what I'm trying to do is to help men discover, first of all, do I know what my value is? Do I know how I'm viewing myself? Secondly, if I do, what can I do about it? Okay, so let's go back here and sorry, that's not the one I wanted to show you. Uh, let's go back here and look at what it looks like. So when you have a view of yourself in a conflict, when your view of yourself is that I am less valuable than she is, you bring attitudes into that conversation, attitudes of worthlessness, of shame, of defeat, of inferiority, of being alone, being belittled, and being unheard. So when you bring that into the conflict, obviously you're bringing things with you that are going to affect what you say, how you say it, and what's going to happen in the relationship. So uh, what does it look like? So when someone comes into a conflict, and conflict is normal, right? And discussions, arguments happen. But when a man, the husband in the marriage, comes into the conflict viewing himself as less valuable, and he brings these things with him, what happens is he brings along with it all of these causes that were behind him. So I I don't have time to. I'm just giving you an overview. FOO is family of origin, trauma. You have issues of abandonment, sudden loss of friends in your life, your body shape, your size, your inferiority comes from all of that, your lack of delight as a child, needing to be the same as everybody else. It's a crazy long list of things that give us this idea that we are less valuable than the person in front of us. But one of the key things, and this is what we really focused on tonight, one of the key things about this is an area that is called contempt, or self-contempt. And let me see if I can find my notes from our session tonight. Contempt is the feeling that a person or a thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving scorn. Okay, that's a lot. What it basically says is when we have contempt for somebody else, we find them worthless, right? They're not worth our time. They're not worth our consideration. They're not worth our thoughts. They're just a worthless human being. And this is, by the way, a huge problem in relationships around the world in all kinds of areas. I'm dealing specifically with men with their wives. So, what I wanted to share with you tonight, though, is when you have a low view of your self value. So, when you're in a conflict with your wife, you are viewing yourself as less valuable than her, you oftentimes bring self contempt into the conflict with you. And self contempt is a powerful, powerful, destructive reality in our life. Self contempt will keep you from living a full and healthy and enjoyable relationship. And here's the thing, though, about self contempt, and this is what I just want to leave you with tonight. When you have self contempt in your life, when you, in other words, you hate yourself, and this is all internal, and a lot of this for many men, we haven't even thought of this. We haven't even realized what is all going on here. But when you have self contempt, what you end up doing is you put that contempt on the person in front of you. And unfortunately, for so many of us, that person so often is our wife. And so for myself, for years, 5 years into my marriage, I'm looking at myself and I'm looking at my marriage and thinking something's not good here. And I'm living with these areas. I'm speaking down to her. I have this uh, contempt for her thoughts and all of those kinds of things. And we had on the outside what looked like a good marriage, but the reality was I knew that I was blowing it. What was happening is I was carrying around with me a self contempt and I was putting it on her. It was powerful, it was destructive. I'm grateful that my wife was strong enough to stay with me all those years and to be with me as I have begun to understand some of those things and look back and realize what the causes of some of those things are. And so as I've done that, um, here are some strategies. If you find if any of this, any of this you find relatable to you, you can recognize viewing yourself as less valuable, and you can recognize self-contempt, self-hatred, and we go into much more details in the course. Men, we have to learn to do four things. Number one, we have to learn to recognize our inner voice. We have to learn to recognize what it is that is going over and over and over and over in our minds. Our inner voice is causing us to have a certain view of our value, which is causing us to relate in destructive ways instead of constructive, creative, and building up kind of a ways. So, number one, we have to recognize our inner voice. Number two, we have to reflect on our story so that we can begin to understand why we have those kinds of values. And we need to get outside insight, right? So we need to have somebody. There's a tool that every human being could benefit from, and that is being able to take your story and tell it to somebody who will listen with empathy. So brain science today tells us that if you can take all of the parts of your story, your life story, and tell it to a person, and they will look you in the eye, and they will cry with you, and they will empathize with you what you're feeling, it literally changes the wiring in the brain. And so, in order to overcome something like self contempt or a low view of your own value, you have to be someone who is able to go back and reflect and get some outside help. Thirdly, we need to recognize contempt, and that's why I brought up contempt. Contempt is a terrible thing to be having in any relationship. And let's be honest, when you think about the relationships of people all around the world, political parties and all kinds of different groups of people, contempt is a huge issue. And we need to recognize it so we can put a stop to it. Most of what we do to overcome problems in relationships is recognizing the patterns, bringing them up into a higher part of our brain, and that's a whole nother teaching I would love to give to you. But we need to bring it up there so that we can overcome them. So recognize the inner voice, reflect on and get outside help, recognize contempt, and then face and overcome shame. And those are the kinds of things we're looking at in our course, 40 Days to Up Your Game. And these guys are working at new patterns, and I'm really proud of them. I would love to show you more about that. If you're interested, you can direct message me or send me a note, or check me out at nextcoaches.com or husbandstrong.com. Um, but my purpose now in life, one of my great purposes, is to help men become better husbands. So if you're looking to up your game, or if you know a man who wants to become better at his husband game, I'd love to talk with you and see if we can't connect and do some work together. So that's my little input for tonight. I hope that you are encouraged with it. If you'd like information, the 4 views of value, or the I have a tool that I use with it called Stop, Drop, and Roll, just again, message me or let me know, and I'd be happy to send it your way. All right. Have a great evening.